This year, Strathclyde Police celebrates its 25th anniversary. Thousands of men and women have served in the force and worked as support staff over those years. For them, it's been a time of mixed emotions, from moments of great pride to witnessing devastating tragedies. But one thing has remained constant: their duty to watch and protect the community. The people who carry out that duty in Scotland's largest police force have shaped the history of Strathclyde Police. This is their story. Most of us take the police for granted. We see them every day, on the beat, in cars, on motorbikes, even in the air. If we need them, they're just a phone call away. It's their job to provide that service. Half the population of Scotland relies on them, a variety of cultures and lifestyles with a diverse range of needs and concerns, from small island communities to busy urban areas. The service that we've come to expect from Strathclyde's 9,000 officers and staff has developed over many years. Since 1975, when Strathclyde Police was born, the pace of change has been dramatic. But the story of this force really begins long before that. As far back as the 18th century, Glasgow made two pioneering attempts at forming a police force, but they failed through lack of funds. The first permanent force in Britain appeared in the early days of the 19th century, when, on the 15th of November 1800, Glasgow Police mustered for the first time under the Glasgow Police Act of that year. In the early 1800s, industrialisation had brought unemployment and extreme poverty to many areas. The resultant increase in vagrancy and crime prompted the formation of police forces in most boroughs, and an increase in police powers from government. As towns and cities grew, so did the police forces. With this expansion, good communications became increasingly important, although the early forms were basic. Whistles and rattles were used to alert other officers to emergencies. It wasn't until the adoption of the electric telegraph in the 1860s that technology made a serious impact on police work. And with the invention of the telephone in the 1880s, a communications revolution began. In 1932, shortly after becoming Chief Constable of Glasgow, Percy Sillitoe introduced a black and white checkered band on the caps of the Glasgow Police Mounted Branch. By August of that year, the trial was declared a success, and the cap band was issued to all officers who wore caps. Its success quickly spread throughout Scotland, and it became known as the Sillitoe tartan. The outbreak of war in 1914 led to large numbers of police officers from the west of Scotland volunteering for the armed services. This drain on resources continued throughout the war years and led to the reorganisation of the Special Constabulary and the employment of police women for the first time. Many officers from west of Scotland police forces were decorated for bravery during both the First and Second World Wars. The Second World War saw prolonged bombing campaigns on Clydebank, Greenock and Glasgow, with many civilian casualties. Several police officers were also injured or lost their lives during air raids. To meet the need for additional personnel, the War Reserve and Special Constabulary were expanded, and the Women's Auxiliary Police Corps and the Police Messenger Service were created. Post-war Britain saw a chance to modernise. In the 1950s, the now familiar peaked cap bearing the Sillitoe tartan replaced the distinctive helmets of the City of Glasgow and Paisley Burgh Forces. uniforms also changed dramatically. When all Scottish forces replaced the closed standing collar of the previous 150 years with an open collar tunic, blue shirt and black tie. In the late 1960s, many of the smaller Burgh Forces amalgamated. However, they were unaware that the biggest change of all was only a decade away. On the 16th of May 1975, due to the formation of Strathclyde Regional Council, a new police force was created to match the new boundaries of the council and meet the needs of the public. Glasgow, Lanarkshire, Renfrew and Bute, Dunbartonshire, Ayrshire, Argyll and part of the Stirling and Clackmannan Police merged. Strathclyde Police was born. Sir David McNee had guided the Glasgow Police through the changeover period to the new regional authority and was rewarded with the stewardship of Britain's second largest force, Strathclyde Police. By 1976, the force was facing personnel problems. Recruiting was cut, while at the same time officers were leaving the force at an alarming rate. Poor pay and conditions meant falling numbers and low morale. The flood of retirements was stemmed in 1979 when a major boost came from the Committee of Inquiry on Police Pay, better known as the Edmund Davis Inquiry. They awarded a significant pay increase across the board. A massive recruitment drive followed to revive numbers, and that year over 600 new recruits were taken on. 5 Chief Constables have overseen the changes in Strathclyde Police since its formation. Sir David McNee was followed by Sir Patrick Hamill, Sir Andrew Sloan, Sir Leslie Sharp and the current Chief Constable John Orr. So how was the amalgamation achieved?
There was various working groups and a whole range of people from all of the constituent police forces to bed in the new arrangements and to actually create a culture of, well, we're no longer Ayrshire, we're no longer Dunbartonshire, we're now Strathclyde. So 2 things had to happen. A significant change in emphasis from a relatively small, in some instances local force, to this macro police organisation covering the population, which essentially is half of Scotland.
Bashir Mann was the last convener of the Glasgow Corporation Police and Fire Committee and is the current convener of the Strathclyde Joint Police Board. What difference does he see between then and now?
I think at that particular time it was just a nominal role, but it has more authority. The board has got more authority now. The present kind of setup, they're far greater manforce. We have a lot of resources. The things we could have now, we could never dream of having in the particular the corporation days.
The first line of defence in the war against crime has always been the beat officer. Walking the beat, whether 25 years ago or in the 1800s, was done for the same reason as it is today, to guard, watch and patrol. That sense of duty is summed up by the Latin inscription on the cap badge, Semper Vigilo, which means always watchful. For the public, the sight of a police officer on the street is just as reassuring today as it's always been.
The beat officer was very much a person who patrolled his area on his own. He didn't have anyone alongside him. In those days, you started off at the bottom. The young officer got the worst beat. In Barhead, at that time it was the Bower Walls. You automatically got that beat, and then you progressed naturally up the better beats until you reached the pinnacle, which was the town centre. You had keys to all compounds. You had to check internal security of buildings within those compounds, and that went on for a number of years. Pullet houses closed at 9:30. 10 o'clock was the maximum. By the time the police officer came on duty at 11 o'clock, all the pubs were shut. Everybody was in their bed. So the night shift was actually your free time. That's when you did your paperwork and checked your beats. Nowadays, it's the exact opposite.
Every Strathclyde police officer has pounded the drill square at the Scottish Police College, Tullyallen, as part of their basic training. The emphasis on physical fitness and practical skills was backed up by a solid grounding in legislation and theory. For many, though, the lasting memories of the college will be the friends they made in those early days. The Force Training Centre in Glasgow has also provided courses for police officers for over 60 years. The need for ongoing training for police officers and support staff has long been recognised. With the range of skills that modern policing demands, the force can't afford to be complacent. Training has been designed and developed that will take those skills out of the classroom and onto the street.
Right, stop the listening.
"1975 brought many changes across the country. Along with the implementation of the new council structure, a piece of legislation was to have a major impact. The Sex Discrimination Act became law, bringing sweeping changes to women in the workplace. Nowhere was this felt more strongly than in police forces.
When I left Renfrew and Butte as a cadet to Kilmarnock Borough Police as a constable, I mean, we had something like 3 women in a force of, say, 85. Now, that was not good news, and in truth, some of the very narrow working environment positions that these women had to operate, that they were not allowed to administer the full spectrum of policing. That's changed dramatically.
The role of police women in 1975 was much different than today. Many limitations were placed upon the types of duties they could perform and how they could progress within the force. The current Assistant Chief Constable Personnel, Sandra Hood, explains.
Women performed restricted duties. They related mainly to crimes or offences committed either by women and children or against women and children. They worked restricted hours and received 9/10 pay. And of course, promotion was strictly on quota basis, and that's very different from how it is today. But another main difference is that at that time there were no career breaks for women, no part-time working for women, and so it was very, very difficult for the women who had family and family commitments to go through the rank structure. The time I joined the service, I had the thought that, you know, to be an inspector would have been a realistic expectation. I'd never have dreamt in my wildest dreams that we would have had women in command of large areas as we have today. I myself worked only for about 9 months in a police women's department, and interestingly, one of my first tasks was to issue a pig permit at the market. Now, that the issuing of permits was a task that the women officers performed. And so we had quite a narrow, we did not patrol an operational duty as we do today. We remained in the office or department until there was a requirement for us to go out to deal with an incident. But if you go back to 1975, perhaps we were not so well equipped to perform the duties that we're performing today because we didn't have that practical experience. But more important than not having the practical experience, we didn't have the opportunity to get the experience. And I think that's one of the main differences between then and now. The opportunities are there today for everyone.
Being a police officer has never been an easy job. It's often unpleasant and dangerous. Many dedicated men and women have been injured or killed in the course of their duty. This book of remembrance is a lasting tribute to those who gave their lives protecting others. It's a sad fact of life that the job often entails facing potentially violent situations. Police officers trying to stop attacks can often end up targets themselves. From the 1800s to the 1990s, the baton was the only means of protection available to the beat officer. They came in many shapes and sizes, but essentially a piece of wood was all that stood between them and serious injury. Criminals have no such limitations in their choice of weaponry.
The variability of circumstances that can be there to confront a police officer is as wide as any eventuality that you care to mention. What looks like a pretty, well, it's a contained, reasonable scenario can turn into a nightmare within minutes, seconds.
New officer safety training techniques and equipment were introduced in the force in 1996 to counter the rising tide of attacks on police officers. Side-handled batons and rigid handcuffs were issued to all officers after their training was complete. New stab-resistant vests and CS sprays followed. Combined, these measures have significantly reduced the number of injuries on duty. Wearing the new safety equipment meant that the uniform had to change. A dramatic new look was introduced with the issue of NATO-style jumpers instead of tunics for everyday use. An officer arriving at an incident may be the public face of Strathclyde Police, but it takes the combined effort of many people to get that officer there. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, a team of people work behind the scenes to keep Strathclyde Police functioning. When the force was established, the role of civilians was limited to mainly clerical, administrative and turnkey duties.
Being a small place, the constable's wife plays a very, very important part. Sometimes I feel that we choose a man for a county station on the ability of his wife to fit into the community. And being a member of the community life, should her husband be absent on patrol from his station, and she very often deals with the mundane, routine matters which the local people bring to her. And rather than inconvenience this gentleman by having him come back again at some later time when her husband is available, then she will note the particulars necessary for forwarding back to the force where he was stopped.
Today, in addition to those tasks, force support staff work in every department throughout the force. Force support officers bring a wealth of experience and continuity to a job, and now exclusively run many specialist and technical departments. The communications revolution that began with the telephone at the end of the 19th century took a giant leap forward in the 1960s. Radio cars had been around since before the Second World War, but early radio sets were by no means portable. For beat officers, contacting their control room meant finding a police pillar or a police box. Advances in electronics allowed smaller, lightweight sets to be produced, and by 1965, personal radios began to be issued to police officers. By the time Strathclyde Police was formed, the PR, as it became known, was standard equipment. Information has always been the lifeblood of police work. Every detail of an incident, inquiry or investigation has to be accurately logged, collated, filed and made easily available when needed. In the past, that meant moving mountains of paper. Computers began to make a real impact in 1975, when the force installed its new command and control system to replace radio logbooks. These days, every police office makes extensive use of computer technology. The Information Technology and Communications Department supports and develops systems across the force. One of these, the Voice Bank, now allows police officers to dictate their reports over the telephone direct to a computer. These reports can then be accessed in office systems centres and stored on networked word processors. There are several networked systems linking divisions and headquarters together, such as the Crime Management System, PNC and SCRO. These are vital tools in the fight against crime. The internet has made an impact on every major organisation worldwide. The police are no exception. The public can now log on to the Force website to find out more about new anti-crime initiatives, access recruiting information and up-to-date press releases. It's proved a major success with over 2 million hits in under 2 years. The grim-faced detectives we've seen on television over the last 25 years were experts at solving crime in 50 minutes. Real experts have always taken a bit longer. Investigating crime is a complicated business, especially since each new year seems to bring a new type of crime and a new type of criminal. In 1975, for example, the numbers of drugs offences were still relatively low, with 305 cases going to court that year. In 1999, that figure had risen to almost 20,000. Some investigative techniques have been used for many years, but the old methods have improved and new ones are developing rapidly.
When I was a cadet, a lot of the older detectives still wore soft hats, and they seem to have been from a generation before. There's a great range of things that happen that will continue to happen. Theft and all crimes of dishonesty continue, but one of the things that has evolved in that is the IT front, where e-commerce and e-crime has come into being, where people don't put a balaclava over their head and necessarily go in and rob a bank with a gun. They can access computer systems, they can hack into systems, and they can set up all sorts of fraudulent fronts using computers.
Now, did you see anything that may be able to assist us in the inquiry?
No, I didn't see anything. I was working under a car.
People, and the great phrase of the 70s and the 60s was, a man is helping police with their inquiries. And nowadays we're very structured on how people do help us with their inquiries. We have the tape rooms, and we've got the technology to adapt that if we want to film as well. The whole thing we're trying to do and improve, and the way things were done in the past, is that the professionalism is there, the techniques are there, but the transparency is there. Somebody can come back and review what you're doing and hear the tape. The tape can be played in court, and the detectives heard and the answers are heard. And one of the bigger surprises for the courts when all this started was the way people did react under interview and admissions that were made, admissions that had been made for years beforehand. But the safeguards there, they can be heard naturally being interviewed.
Forensic science is an area of police work where advances in technology have greatly improved the quality and variety of evidence that can be gathered. The principle that every contact leaves a trace is the basis for every investigation. Scientific developments such as DNA analysis have made it possible to obtain information from evidence invisible to the naked eye. Evidence which could be used in court to help establish the links between crime scenes and suspects, or to eliminate suspects from inquiries. The Forensic Support Department has highly trained staff across the force who can gather evidence at crime scenes. These samples can then be tested in the laboratories. To complement the work undertaken by the laboratories, the National DNA Database can compare DNA recovered at crime scenes with DNA taken from individuals. The results speak for themselves. 1,000 matches from 1,500 samples in the last 2.5 years. Traditional fingerprinting, of course, still plays an important part in identifying suspects. The old ink and paper methods, however, are now being replaced by scanning systems linked to a central computer.
This allows suspects at even the most remote offices to be identified within minutes of arriving at the station. In 25 years, Strathclyde Police has played a key role in all of the west of Scotland's landmark events. Each was a happy mixture of work and pleasure for the officers who were privileged to attend. Years of preparation go into organising some of these events, and that preparation time pays off. But there have been darker days and darker moments.
Here's more police horses coming on to give assistance. Now we have 8 of them all together, all of them with their long batons drawn.
When disasters strike, a fast and effective response is needed, not only from the police but from other agencies involved. Within Strathclyde Police, the responsibility for preparing and testing action plans for disasters lies with the Emergencies Planning Section. They liaise with local authorities, the other emergency services and the voluntary sector to provide a coordinated response to incidents. Their expertise has been called upon many times over the last 25 years. The advent of cable and satellite with 24-hour news coverage means live pictures of disasters can be beamed around the world within minutes of them happening. Major incidents become major news. Print journalism has also used the advances in mobile phone technology to send pictures and stories back to the printing press, often within minutes of arriving.
On the 21st of December 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over the town of Lockerbie. At the peak of the police operation, 483 officers from Strathclyde were drafted into the area to help. Hundreds of journalists from around the world were also there to cover the story. Superintendent Ian Gordon is the current media relations officer.
I think Lockerbie thrust not only Dumfries and Galloway into the world stage, but also Strathclyde Police and Angus Kennedy in particular. Angus was the point of contact for the world's press. He had to deal with a lot of difficult inquiries. And within 24 hours of Lockerbie, the number of journalists there equalled the number of police officers that Dumfries and Galloway had, and that was something like 370 police officers at the time was the force strength. That was the number of media who were there within 24 hours. We had experience as a force to deal with that. It happened in another force area. Clearly we are the largest force in Scotland. We are used to dealing with incidents of that nature. It's no disrespect to the force involved that they needed assistance. Quite clearly they needed assistance from a larger force and with people who have a particular specialism, for example dealing with the media. Well, I think people tend to reflect on a lot of the sad incidents that have taken place. That's the ones that the media obviously will photograph, report, and they keep coming back to, and that's important. Lockerbie, for example, also Dunblane, the Chinook helicopter crash. But I like to think about other incidents that we're involved in as well, like the papal visit, which attracted almost 250,000 people at Bellahouston Park in the early 80s. And types of incidents like that people also remember, we had a role to play there.
With the amalgamation of forces that made up Strathclyde Police came a vast range of operational duties. The sheer scale of the force area meant that coordination of specialist skills was a necessity. Support Services was created to fulfil that role. They provide a wealth of resources and experience to deal with virtually any operation or incident. The Support Unit, Dog Branch, Mounted Branch, Air Support Unit, Underwater Search Unit, Mountain Rescue and Hill Search Team all come under the Support Services umbrella. The longest established of the support services is the Mounted Branch.
The Mounted Branch first came into existence in the 1800s when the military was used. They would bring cavalry in to cope with crowd control situations. In the mid-1800s, James Smart, the Chief Constable of the City of Glasgow Police, then decided the benefits, or the rare benefits with having a mounted branch. And what he done was that to every divisional headquarters he'd a register of all the police officers that could ride. And he also at that time bought 24 saddles. And if there was a crowd control situation came up, then he would get the officers that could ride together along with the saddles, and he would hire horses. So one day they could be pulling a carriage, the next day these horses could be used for police duties. Then we hired horses permanently. So we still had the 24 saddles and we hired 24 horses. And then later on in the 1940s we then bought these horses. We still to this day have 24 horses in the police stables here at Strathclyde Street. In the last 25 years I would say that our duties have definitely changed significantly. Our main duty used to be crowd management, crowd control. Now I would say, although we still have a big part to play in crowd management and crowd control, our main duty now is high visibility, high profile policing. And every day of the week we are in territorial divisions carrying out that role.
Motoring on today's congested roads may often seem more like a competition than a convenient form of transport. We all remember fondly the days of fewer cars and fewer traffic jams. But the picture wasn't all rosy. In 1975, 344 people were killed on the roads of Strathclyde. At that time, seat belts were not compulsory, drink driving was more accepted by the public, and cars lacked today's safety features. The toll of road deaths has been steadily reduced over the years, to the extent that by 1999 it had fallen by 2/3. The Traffic Department has played a major role in this reduction.
Significantly addressing our part in the 3 E's, as it's termed, education, engineering and enforcement. We're often labelled with the latter only, enforcement, but I think we have continued to keep a broad focus on the other 2 E's in terms of education and focused our skills and abilities in dealing with real problem areas such as young drivers. In terms of technology, the traffic officer has had to keep up to pace, I would say, quite significantly, particularly in the areas of dealing with speeding, where it was very much in early days, stopwatches or calibrated speedometers, and we've moved on there onto VASCA, which is sort of computerised equipment within the vehicle, handheld radars, more recently pro laser radars. We've gone on to camera enforcement within from headquarters and linking with our local authorities. So there's been a fair pace in terms of technology, and that doesn't slow down, particularly in current times. But it's changed considerably since 1975. I clearly remember being able to move through the city a lot better than we can now with marked police vehicles, and the congestion is much more difficult to handle.
It's better to prevent crime than to solve it. One way of doing that is to help the public help themselves. People need information and advice from local officers who know the community and who can use the wide range of force resources to tackle their concerns. The work done in partnership with community groups tackling local issues is important. On a larger scale, major initiatives such as Operation Blade and Operation Eagle have been used to mobilise resources to tackle specific crimes. The current initiative is Spotlight. Launched on the 1st of October 1996, the aim is to tackle violent crime and disorder using high-profile, intelligence-led policing.
Since 1992, it has helped reduce housebreaking by 50%.
Advertising also plays a major role in tackling the fear of crime and reassuring the public.
Together, we're making our streets safer.
There is a public perception that children are more at risk today than they were 25 years ago. Strathclyde Police have recognised this and developed the STEPS programme for primary schools. The children are taught basic personal safety skills, road sense, and encouraged to discuss community issues. Links made with school children through this and other schemes help promote good community-based relations.
The second very important thing is
this year, one of the ways used to strengthen this relationship was the Choices for Life event, a drug awareness forum for all Primary 7 children in the Strathclyde Police area. Using theatre, dance, videos and music, the audience were asked to think about the choices that they may have to face. Over the last 25 years, the police have worked hard to improve the links with every section of the community. This has meant the police responding and adapting to changing community needs. The look of new recruits has changed too. With the abolition of height and age restrictions, they're now solely chosen on their ability to do the job.
Well, we're recruiting from a wide background. If you think about the diversity of Strathclyde Police, then it's important that we have all types of people to police the vast area that we have a responsibility for. And the profile of the recruits coming in are wide-ranging, some with degrees, others with a good skill base. But we're recruiting from all backgrounds, and we need that for the vast area that we require to police and the complexities of the issues that we have to deal with.
The Strathclyde Police story began in the towns and villages of the west of Scotland, so it was fitting that they should celebrate their 25th anniversary in the heart of the communities they serve. Two of the many events in a busy calendar were the torch run relay and the rededication ceremony at Glasgow Cathedral. The torch run was organised by the Strathclyde Police Recreation Association and held between the 8th and 12th of May. A team of 25 runners covered over 325 miles in 5 days. Other officers, school children and members of the community joined them along the way. The runners were carrying messages of goodwill to the local authorities, police offices and community groups. Their aim was to involve as many schools and local people as possible in this fun event. On Sunday the 14th of May, an ecumenical service was held in Glasgow Cathedral. The Forces' 2 chaplains conducted a rededication service which was attended by 650 invited guests, including many serving and retired police officers and support staff.
In 1975, no one could have predicted what the future held for the new police force that would serve the people of Strathclyde. The first 25 years have now become part of history, and the facts and figures are there for all to see. For the people who made that history, the retired officers, special constables, force support officers and serving officers, the Strathclyde Police story has been part of their lives. The men and women who are joining the force today will have many new challenges to face. The tradition of service and dedication to duty, which has been the hallmark of Strathclyde Police, will ensure that everyone will be well equipped to play their part in the next 25 years of the story. I'll leave the final word now to the present Chief Constable, John Orr.
The natural history and progression of policing in Scotland has been large number of small forces to a smaller number of bigger forces, to a smaller number again of bigger forces, to the current 8 template that we've had since 1975. I would suspect that that will change in the next decade and beyond, and I would suspect that there's a fair chance that it could move to again to 2 or 3 forces in Scotland, and who's to say maybe even a national police force. My worry would be that that's okay, but the minute that the public perceive that this is not their force and is some national entity that doesn't understand what they're about, I just have a wee suspicion that perhaps that could be counterproductive.